Only 3 minutes over. That's not bad. Join me in once again congratulating each and every one of you. Each of the presentations were outstanding. Now, just some brief rules. We have a big crowd, and I'm sure you have a lot of questions that you would like to ask. Number one question, not with 3 parts, but one question. Directed at who you want to answer your question, or the entire panel, if you will.
No math questions.
No? Okay, yeah, that's true. Father, maybe they'll ask you questions too, I don't know. Let me take the liberty, since I'm the moderator, and throw the first one out. The thing that I worry about each day from a social scientist point of view is how are we going to keep those 25-year-old engineers, and Pete, you made me think of the doctors that are overseas. How are we going to keep those 25-year-old engineers that have graduated from university, doctors, on the island? I mean, here's Raul introducing his economic reforms. I said, don't expect change until 2015. Well, hell, I've been waiting for 50 years to a great extent. And that's a real challenge that we're going to have. Now, your very good comment, East and Central Europe, and this is one of the things I want to ask any one of you. One of the things that Hungary, particularly Poland, and the Czech Republic did that worked for them extremely well is they send their professionals out to the United States to be trained by people like you. Are we ready for that? Because I don't see us getting anytime soon an invitation from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Cuba to invite us in. Are we ready to receive our colleagues and begin to train them so they can go back at the appropriate time and train others? Anyone?
The first point is actually leveraging technology.
Yeah, there's 2 mics. And I'm glad you mentioned that.
The first point is actually leveraging the technology, because we got to change the rules of the game. Obviously, we're not going to bring 40,000 people to study over here in any sort. However, we do have technologies now that allow for virtual education, where we can have access to experts. The fundamental challenge for us is how do we keep the intellectual capital in Cuba? Cuba was devastated back in the early 60s because of the brain drain. It could happen again. So the fundamental first step is to creating a services industry that is well-funded with the proper infrastructure, the proper technology, and the proper incentives for people to stay, and actually people from here migrate over there and provide services.
Excellent. Nick, you want to jump in? I don't think the mic is on. Check it.
I would just add that it's been said already. I mean, once a market system is instituted and, excellence is rewarded, then these bright young 25-year-olds are going to have a reason to stay, because they can be compensated commensurate with their hard work and.
But I didn't see it this time with the 300+ economic reforms.
And you won't see it.
And you won't see it very soon either.
This group, limiting the reforms.
Anyone else? Okay, let's open it up. Who has a question? Please.
Yeah, I think all of the items that were addressed tonight have to go hand in hand with something that Nicolas was referring to, but talking about the regulations, building code, zoning code, and I'd like to hear some comments of, I have no idea what the present situation in Cuba is in regard to that.
Good point.
If any of the presenters have any comments on that, I'd like to hear. And secondly, Elena, we're going to have follow-up companions in the future to this one. It would be good to include as one of the subjects, the subject of building codes, regulations.
Yeah.
If anyone have any knowledge of what is happening in Cuba today in that regard, I'd like to hear.
Unfortunately,
Probably not much.
The need does exist, obviously. It has to be predetermined, it has to be pre-developed. from our perspective, from Tana's and my perspective, it needs to be done at the regional scale. The codes and so on need to be very, very specific to those areas where people take pride in ownership. This is our place, this is our culture, this is what we believe in. And then they will listen to the regulations. If you impose national codes, that's not gonna work. For example, one good lesson, which I'm sure Elena is very familiar with, Florida, the water aspect, the water management aspect is done by regions. We don't think about it, but the South Florida Water Management District is our own, it's our region, it's Southeast Florida. The Gulf has another one, and so on, Central Florida. So our approach would be to institute the codes, whether zoning, building, and so on, but based on the needs of the region, not try to impose something national. But beyond that, I'm sorry, that is beyond the scope of our. Elena wants to.
Doctor.
It's my understanding that Cuba does have, with respect to the water systems, it does have regulations with respect, very similar to what we have here. They classify the waters based on intended use. There's a question about how it's governed, whether or not the agency that sets the requirements is sort of self-governing themselves, and whether or not they're truly independent, and whether or not they actually enforce the rules. But they do have in place a series of water quality standards that can be potentially used as long as they can be enforced.
In medicine, there is no regulation. Zero. The only thing they regulate is the money they get from the people. They overload, those.
True.
But there's no regulation, nothing.
Yeah. Next question. Yes, sir, right here. Stand up, please.
Hi, my name is Jose Rodriguez. I'm a student from the University of Florida, member of...
Dad, I don't take questions from gators. I have two son-in-laws that are gators. Can you believe that?
I'm also a member of the Association of Cuban Student Engineers from the same school. And I had a question regarding the presentation on power infrastructure. I had two brief questions. Based on some research and readings I've conducted on Cuban power infrastructure, I've heard about the Unión Eléctrica, and you mentioned El Grupo Eléctrico. Is this the same institution? Is this the same group?
Ese micrófono trabaja.
The lawyer turned it on, the engineers.
Unión Eléctrica is the name of the company. And Grupo Electrógeno is an idea that happened in 2002, where they said, let's put a lot of small diesel plants to provide power. And they bought 3,500
you're very kind.
to be used permanently, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that doesn't work. I think, that's my personal opinion, that certain officers convinced the guy that never dies, I hope he will, and got a percentage of the money that they use in their pockets. Because it's a crazy idea, and I don't think any engineer in Cuba will do that because they know that doesn't work. So Grupo Electrónico means the small machines. Unión Eléctrica is like Florida Power and Light here.
So they both belong to Ministerio de Industria Básica.
Unión Eléctrica belongs to the Ministerio de Industria Básica, and the Grupo Electrógeno belongs to Unión Eléctrica.
All right, I see. Well, the second question I had, so...
I will give you a second question, but how about
Oh,
that?
sorry.
Very quickly.
If there's time, thanks.
It takes the gators a little bit more time to get it.
So we talked about the major problems that exist currently with Cuban power infrastructure, and it was said that one of the major problems is maintenance on the transmission lines, right? I've also heard that a big problem is the use of fossil fuels, and the fact that power generation in Cuba is mainly dependent on this source rather than in the coal or other renewable sources as we're doing here, which would somehow enhance power generation. Is there any plan, does the organization has any plans, future plans for building either a new Cuban power infrastructure or a fixed I mean, because I don't know much was said in this regard.
The problem was that the Cuban oil and the Venezuelan oil, there's too high sulfur content.
Yeah, very crude.
10%, 12%. So when they get this high temperature at the boilers corrode. And that's why all these plants went down. They initiated a conversion that cost a lot of money in the 2002 to 2005, trying to convert the plants to handle this oil. Now, natural gas is the solution for this, and but you need to have it, and you need to convert the plants to that. Now, once this happens, and once Cuba is free, there is a decision to be made. What do you do with these plants? You renew them, or you just put it aside and build new one, and that's a matter of economics. What's better?
Aren't they doing the Cienfuegos plan? Redoing it
Yeah,
completely?
they are,
With Venezuelan money,
They are
Right.
modernizing.
modernizing
To
it.
convert it to gas, and the gas
Right.
is coming from Matanzas
Uh-huh.
to an oleoduct. Yes, and they're doing it like in 2 or 3 other plants,
Yeah.
but it's not enough.
So would you suggest, last video,
He's gonna write his thesis after tonight.
I'm just majoring in electrical engineering, I'm interested in power, but would you suggest implementation of the use of other sources such as coal or renewables?
No, coal is out of the line
Yeah.
because it's too expensive. It's the cheapest one that you have, but the equipment that you have to put around it to make it not contaminating the atmosphere, it make it almost aside. You don't use it anymore. It has to be fuel oil or natural gas.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Next question, please. Yes, sir.
My name is Ricardo Valdez, I'm also a Gator.
What did I start?
What needs to happen to keep the Pinchos from owning all the production, all the businesses that are now owned by the government? That's what happened in Eastern Europe.
Who's that question for?
Well,
Nick.
I mean, that's directly in line with the restoration of the rule of law and the recognition of private property rights. If you don't have a clear system from the beginning, like the Czech Republic did, like Slovakia did, like occurred in Eastern Germany, in Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, where those countries, which not coincidentally are leagues ahead of their other Central and Eastern European neighbors because they were much more deferential to the legitimate owners. If you set up that system from the beginning, it cuts the legs from under the Cuban analogous counterpart to the Russian mafia, which essentially were the KGB, the Pinchos that empowered themselves and became, huge tycoons in Russian natural resources. You need to have a claims period, short claims period. You have to have administrative tribunals because Cuba doesn't have the luxury of spending a decade in litigation, in judicial courts, which don't exist currently. There's no independent judicial courts. Cuba, they have to be rebuilt from scratch. So, very important that you have that claims period, private property model, restitution based, since there's not enough compensation to fairly and adequately compensate. You're gonna, almost by default, have to go to restitution based system. And it may well be that some owners can't or won't or don't want to run the properties again, but they should be empowered to sell them, joint venture them, bring in partners, bring in capital to get the country moving again. Only when property is returned to all, Cubans on the island, Cubans in exile, American and other foreign companies, only when the properties are returned will there be the investment necessary to create a multiplier effect across the island, start paying people in a real currency, and then you'll have professionals and others staying put because there's no reason to go elsewhere. But there has to be a clear system of enforceable property rights, there has to be a real currency, and there has to be a free market economy where market forces can do their work. Across cultures, you've seen it in Germany, you've seen it in Korea, you've seen it in Hong Kong, wherever these principles are implemented, they work, regardless of what the local religious or ethnic culture is. And they will work in Cuba.
Good answer. Next question. Well, no? Well, I think we're done. Join me also in thanking Father Jose Luis Menendez for joining us tonight. Again, I commend all of you. It was an extremely good presentation. The next step is something that we need to think about as to where we go. Thank you for coming tonight.